Story time, the Barkays. Who are the Barkays? Well, I'll tell you. The Barkays are an American funk band out of Memphis, Tennessee, formed as a recording studio session group in 1964, backing major artists at Stax Records. In 1967, they were chosen by Otis Redding to play as his backing band for his Stax Records studio recordings and stage performances, and were tutored for that role by Al Jackson Jr. and Booker T. Jones, along with other members of Booker T and the MGs. For the most part, the band was kept busy in the studio playing at an A-game level, but usually as an anonymous backup band for other Stax Records, Volt Records artists, particularly for Isaac Hayes, who was an American singer, songwriter, composer, and actor. The band had dozens of charting singles from the 1960s through the 1980s, including Soul Finger, that reached number 17 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 and peaking at number 3 for U.S. R&B music in 1967. The B-side of the single, Soul Finger, was Knucklehead, written by Booker T. Jones and Steve Cropper, which reached number 28 on the R&B singles chart and number 76 on the Hot 100. The cut Son of Shaft reached number 10 for R&B music in 1972, and in 1980, Boogie Bodyland reached number 7 for R&B music. Now, many music lovers only remember the earlier Barkays from their smash hit, Soul Finger, the band's first single released and issued by Stax Records on the Volt Records label on April 14th, 1967. Here's a fun fact for you. The song was written by the Barkays while they were rehearsing with Norman West Jr., a member of the soul music group for Stax Records, the Soul Children, to perform a cover of Jerome Louis J.J. Jackson's song, But It's All Right. It begins with the melody of the popular children's song, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then cuts into the main riff, punctuated with a high trumpet trill. It features a chorus of neighborhood children who had been hanging outside the recording studio. They were asked to shout Soul Finger and were paid with Coca-Cola. The idea for the title and the shouts came from the Stax songwriters Isaac Hayes and David Porter. The Soul Finger track was used as the opening theme to BBC Radio 1 DJ Stuart Henry's shows from 1969 to 1974. On December 10th, 1967, the band was traveling with Otis Redding to play their next concerts in Madison in Otis Redding's Beechcraft H-18 airplane during poor weather, despite warnings to not fly. Otis Redding and 4 members of the band, Jimmy King, who played guitar, Ronnie Cardwell, who played electric organ, Fallon Jones, who played saxophone, and Carl Cunningham, who played drums, along with their partner, Matthew Kelly, died when their airplane crashed into Lake Monona while attempting to land at Truxfield, a civil military airport located near Madison, Wisconsin. Trumpeter Ben Carley was the only survivor of the crash. The bassist James Alexander was on another airplane, as the plane carrying Otis Redding would only hold 7 passengers. Ben Carley and James Alexander, survivors of the fatal airplane crash, rebuilt the group. Trumpeter Ben Carley died in Memphis on September 21st, 2015, at the age of 67. The reformed band consisted of Ben Carley on trumpet, James Alexander on bass, Harvey Henderson on saxophone, Michael Tolles on guitar, Ronnie Gordon on organ, Willie Hall on drums, and later Larry Dotson, formerly of the Stax act The Temprees, on lead vocals. The group backed dozens of major Stax artists on recordings, including Isaac Hayes, on his album Hot Buttered Soul. Now, if you want to experience a natural high, a psychedelic vibe while kicking back, listen to Hayes' Hot Buttered Soul album, released in 1969. It will not disappoint, guaranteed. Ben Carley, trumpeter, left the group in 1971, leaving James Alexander on bass guitar, Larry Dodson on vocals and vibes, Barry Wilkins on guitar, Winston Stewart on keyboards, Harvey Henderson on tenor sax and flute, Charles Scoops Allen on trumpet, and Alvin Hunter on drums to create the album Black Rock, released in 1971. Lloyd Smith joined in 1973, and the band changed musical direction during the 1970s, forging a successful career in funk music with the Stax folk label. In the early 1970s, the Bar-Kays pioneered what was then called black rock, a style now known simply as funk. Their wardrobe was categorized as eccentric. Singer Larry Dodson even wore a live boa around his neck. The seven-man ensemble jammed louder than any soul band on the planet, added heavy portions of rock guitar, and featured exaggerated vocal pronunciations by lead singer Larry Dodson. Their self-contained style had a lot in common with sounds that would later be popularized by groups like the Ohio Players and the Commodores. Then in 1975, during their most innovative period, their recordings were barred from being issued due to a legal dispute with Stax Records and its distributor, CBS Records, a former name of Sony Music. Consequently, there were no Bar-Kays releases on the market from 1973 until the band signed with Mercury Records in 1976. And once again, the rock funk band rose on the music charts. In 1976, Larry Dodson, vocals, James Alexander, bass guitar, Lloyd Smith, guitar, Charles Scoops Allen, trumpet, Harvey Henderson, saxophone, Frank Thompson, trombone, Winston Stewart, keyboards, and Mike Beard, drums, brought the Shake Your Rump to the Funk track into the R&B top 5. In the autumn of 1977, the group came out with Flying High on Your Love, an album that featured Shut the Funk Up, a near-perfect disco song punctuated by the funky horn sounds of Charles Scoop Allen, Harvey Joe Henderson, and Frank Captain Disaster Thompson, and dominated by vocalist Larry D. Dodson's call to get on up or just shut the funk up. The group peaked as a funk band from the late 1970s to the late 1980s. They released singles such as Move Your Boogie Body, 1979, Hit and Run, 1981, Freak on the Dance Floor, 1984, Certified True, 1987, and the hit song Struck by You, 1989. In 1983, Sherman Guy left the group, and Larry L.J. Johnson took his place on vocals and percussion. Charles Allen left the group just before it took a more commercial direction. Marcus Price, a guitarist of the band, was murdered in 1984. The Bar-Kays would continue to have hits on R&B charts well into the 1980s. The band took an extended break in the late 1980s, but regrouped in 1991 with James Alexander once again being the only original member. At the beginning of the band's regroup in 1991, Larry Dodson, Archie Love, Brian Smith, and Tony Gentry had performing with the group. In 2013, the group was inducted into the Memphis Music Hall of Fame, And on June 6, 2015, the Bar-Kays were inducted into the official Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame in Clarksdale, Mississippi. So the next time that you're deep in the crates, listening to soul music from the 1960s and the 1970s and funk music in the early 1980s, stop and listen to the band behind the singing of the vocalists. You will discover another dimension in what you are feeling and hearing when you are vibing to this era and genre of music. Give the band some respect. Facts.